Whether you love or hate Modern Warfare, you have to admit it has been an incredibly successful Call of Duty game. In fact, there have been many stats that have been put out that it is the most sold and most played Call of Duty on the next generation console, aka PS4 and Xbox One. But this led me to a question that was very difficult to actually answer. How many people are actually playing Modern Warfare? How many people are playing on a daily basis? How many people are playing per month? And the difficult part about this is that there are no numbers out there to get to this conclusion until today. There are several numbers that have been put out by Activision and Infinity Ward that we can draw some conclusions with, both on the amount of games sold and based off of the amount of players that are consistently playing. And after I did all these calculations, a lot of these numbers were really surprising, and there's a lot of them to actually talk about. So I'm gonna just shut up and dive into the numbers here to talk about how many people are actually playing Modern Warfare. So to fully understand this, the first thing we have to look at is how many people actually bought Modern Warfare. And this was actually a number on the last generation consoles that Activision would actually put out and tell us how many copies of the game actually sold. But since the next generation of Call of Duty and since sales have declined, this is something that hasn't really been published by Activision since. However, with Modern Warfare, there's enough information out there that we can draw a pretty solid conclusion, and the numbers on Activision's side are actually looking pretty damn good. So the first stat that we saw shortly after the launch of the game is within the first 3 days after the game's launch, the game sold $600 million worth of games. That is an incredibly large number and is actually really easy to work with. Since every single Call of Duty game is about $60, we can just take 600 million, divide it by 60, and it tells us that about 10 million copies were sold within the first 3 days. That is incredibly successful, but I will say the number's probably a little bit lower than that, because as we know, Call of Duty has special editions that sell for more than $60. So let's just say that within the first 3 days of the game being launched, between 8 million and 10 million copies were sold. Now, since then, another stat has been put out. Around Christmas time, Activision put out a number that Call of Duty Modern Warfare has now sold over $1 billion worth of its game. What this means is that number now jumps up from around 10 million to 16.6 million copies sold. And after looking through various websites, I have found that this number remains true, ranging from about 15 million copies sold to 20 million copies sold, which is incredibly successful by Call of Duty standards even. Let's look at this compared to some older games. So this is on a website called Statista, and it tracks the sales of older Call of Duty games. I've used some of these numbers before. The one thing to note is that they're not 100% correct. In fact, I know for a fact Modern Warfare 3 has sold more than Black Ops 1, so just keep that in mind, but the numbers are relatively good. You can see Black Ops 1 and Modern Warfare 3 sitting around 31 million copies sold. The important thing to note about this is since these are older games, they've had time to sell more and more over time, and to be quite honest with you, Modern Warfare 2019 is pretty much on track to be probably up around this 25 million copies sold, which is around the Modern Warfare 2 standards. The one other thing to mention is that Black Ops 3 is actually the most downloaded Call of Duty game ever, and has actually sold 40 million copies. The difference is that they went free to play for a month, and a lot of people downloaded it for free, which means that Black Ops 3's numbers are inflated, and the 26 million number is actually a lot more on track with what the actual numbers are. But we are looking at right in the middle of the road around Modern Warfare 2 numbers once all is said and done. So some pretty good sales numbers. So that means right now, the very most 20 million people are playing Modern Warfare. Now, that's ridiculously high. A lot of people play the game, beat the campaign, play the multiplayer for a bit, and just put it away in their collection of video games. I would say that is probably the vast majority of players do that. So what percentage of players from that number are playing consistently, every day, every month? Well, this is a lot harder to actually get, but there are some more numbers that recently came out where we can get a bit of a better idea. Recently, Activision did something pretty cool. What they did is they took one of their bundles within the store, known as the OUTBACK bundle, and put all proceeds generated from it towards wildfire relief in Australia. Now, in doing this, they also released the final amount of number in sales for this OUTBACK bundle, which was $1.6 million, which is an absolutely insane amount of money to donate, and I'm actually really happy that they did that. This is probably the best thing we've ever seen come out of microtransactions from Call of Duty. So well done, Call of Duty. But this can actually tell us some more information. First of all, this OUTBACK bundle was 1,800 COD points, or about $18 American. Since we know that they donated $1.6 million American, we can kind of assume that they have sold 89,000 copies, because 1.6 million divided by 18 is just under 89,000. So we now know, because of this, at the very, very minimum, 89,000 people are playing a month. But of course, that's going to be really low because not everyone is going to buy the bundle. In fact, not many people, compared to the amount of people playing, probably bought this bad boy. So what conclusions can we draw from these numbers? Well, this is where it gets a little bit more difficult. For example, the Nikto bundle, or Nikito, or I don't know how to say his name. I screw it up every time. But this bundle, I'm guessing, is probably the most sold bundle so far that is sold within Modern Warfare. It's a character that a lot of people wanted. It probably sold the most. I'm guessing a lot of the percentage of players who play the game consistently probably bought this as well. Unfortunately, we don't have the sales number for that one. So what I actually had to do here is browse the internet and try to find some studies about the percentage of players that actually consistently buy microtransactions within games. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of these studies because a lot of the game developers keep these numbers secret. So keep in mind, these numbers are going to be a little bit off, but two of these studies really stood out to me. The first of which was the amount of players who play AAA video games that consistently buy microtransactions. They averaged this to be about 1 microtransaction a month. This is 16% of players who play the game. The other stat that I found interesting is the percentage of players who buy almost every microtransaction that's available within the game. And this number I actually thought was relatively high, between 2 and 4%, which, when you think about it, doesn't seem like a lot of players, but when they're buying absolutely everything, that's quite a few people. But what we can do is take these percentages, apply them to the 89,000 people who actually bought the OUTBACK bundle, and kind of come up with a range for the amount of people playing the game monthly. So first of all, we have to look on the low end. What if 16% of players bought the OUTBACK bundle? I think this is a little high. I don't think 16% of people bought this OUTBACK bundle, but let's just use this as a high end. So if that is the case, there will be about 556,250 people playing per month. This is on the low end. So if we use the smaller number, this is the 4% that we talked about before that buy nearly everything within the game. This applied to the 89,000 would bring the total amount of players per month to about 2.2 million, which in my opinion is pretty damn high. So I think if we take these two numbers and kind of find a median, that'll give us the amount of players approximately playing per month across all consoles. And if we take the median of that, it approximately puts us to 1.4 million players monthly. This number actually makes a lot of sense to me. And just as a comparison, it appears as though PUBG over the last month has had about 700,000 players over the past month, which is just on PC, not on any consoles, and the numbers that we're looking at for Call of Duty Modern Warfare are across all consoles. So once again, these numbers are making a lot of sense. In fact, I do think that 1.4 million people per month might be a little bit low. I'm kind of guessing it's more around the 2 million mark, but we're just using numbers that I found from a few studies and based off of the numbers from the OUTBACK bundle. So of course these numbers are going to be off, but I think it gives us a pretty good baseline. I would say between 1.4 million and 2 million active players per month. Now we can take this a step further. I found another study that said 7% of players who play a game will play daily. If we apply this to that 1.4 million number, there's about 100,000 people playing Modern Warfare daily. This is the one stat we've talked about that I don't think is right. I think Call of Duty Modern Warfare probably has more likely between 200,000 and 400,000, but that is purely speculation. This is the one stat I don't want you to trust me on. My guess would be on a day like a Monday when when a lot of people are at work, that is when there's 100,000 people playing. And then on a weekend, like a Saturday, Sunday, probably more like 400,000 people playing. Again, this is all speculation. Take this stat with a grain of salt. So now that it's all out there, let's look at the stats that I believe actually make a lot of sense. So first of all, the one thing that we know, the number that's been put out there, as of right now, Modern Warfare has sold between 15 million and 20 million total copies. The OUTBACK bundle sold around 89,000 copies. Based off of these numbers and some studies that I looked up, the average amount of players per month seems to be averaging out to about 1.4 million to 2 million players a month. That number will continue to decrease as we get further and further away from launch. Also, to mention, these numbers only make sense right now at the time that the OUTBACK bundle is out. Closer to launch, these numbers would have been much higher, and the further we get away from launch, the lower these numbers will go. Keep in mind, these numbers we looked at today are not exact. They're just some conclusions I drew based off of some numbers we've seen about sales and some studies that I found online. If you disagree, agree, think I'm absolutely nuts for trying to make this video, let me know what you think down in the comments, but these are the numbers that I came to, and from everything I understand about video games and Call of Duty sales, they make a lot of sense. So, hopefully you enjoyed. I know there was a lot of math in this video, so not all of you may have enjoyed that, but if you did, I'd appreciate it if you could hit that like button. Also, if you're new to the channel, we've got lots of new content coming, especially with Season 2 right around the corner, so if you want to stay up to date on everything, make sure you subscribe, have notifications on. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and until next time, peace out.
We are reaching for the stars, but we're making this too hard.